How's it going, folks? My name is John. I'm a developer over at Intuition Protocol. And today I just want to walk you through a little bit about what we have going on, and more importantly, how it relates to devs and how we can be of assistance in, building out an application, POC, really any sort of blockchain type interaction. Be super helpful. So first off, just sort of want to go through some of our core concepts and preliminary material, just so all the rest of this makes sense. First off, just want to preface this with the fact that we've just released our alpha to a select group of folks. Definitely gonna be some bugs. If you encounter any, please holler at us. We really take pride in fixing those quickly. And I'll probably be one of the great folks that do it. So without further ado, the two core concepts in intuition are identities and claims. So what really is an identity? It's essentially the atomic unit of information in intuition. So you can think of it: person, place, thing, animal, any sort of noun, word, generally representative of a concept or person. And they're meant to be basic, they're meant to be simple. Because any sort of additional context or information about those entities, rather than being provided up front upon creation, is actually derived based on how it is used in claims. So leads us into the next thing. What is a claim? It's essentially a structured order of identities, taking the form subject, predicate, and object. So the most basic example, and this one's definitely true, would be John is really, really, really cool, right? With John being the subject, is being the predicate, and really, really, really cool being the object. So what you can do with claims is provide context to identities, and users can attest for and against claims. And so the whole point of being able to have these sort of atomic units of identities and then composing them into claims, claims you can't create duplicates, is that there's no fragmentation of information or contribution. And so at a larger scale, when we have this large information bank, it allows us to sort of harness the wisdom of the crowds to find insight in things that maybe not so black or white, yes or no. Is this a good restaurant? Is this a good app? How did you like this developer experience? Was it positive, negative, things like that? So we really tend to focus more so on the subjective. So moving into really the meat here is an example app per se, called Internet Amigos, that we're gonna sort of be building using intuition. So to start off, let's go through some of this preparation work. So that involves essentially authenticating and setting up the client. So the two things needed for authentication as it stands are a API key, as well as a private key, or public private key pair. And this is essentially used to create a DID session, which is a temporary sort of authenticated key that can be used to interact with the application. And typically this would be done on client side. However, just for convenience of running through this, we're doing it in the backend context. So the session and the API key are included as headers, and those are used to authenticate the clients. We'll have two clients, one for each of the users, right? Because no fun to have an app with only one user. So first things first, we got users. That's great. But intuition is sort of a sea of information. And it would be kind of weird to be getting all of the sea of information displayed in your application that maybe only focused on a small portion of it. So first thing we're going to focus on is sort of how do I sort of encapsulate my own application data within intuition. So I have some control over, what's being displayed and what's being contributed. So the first things we'll do is create an identity for each of the users, right? So here we'll have my user and my other user. You'll see a couple other user names pop up. Ran through this a couple times, so don't be too surprised. So once we've retrieved them, it's like, okay, great. We have these users. There's a lot of other identities out there, and there's nothing here stating that this is part of the Internet Amigos. So how can we do that? Well, let's create a claim. And over here at Internet Amigos, we don't have users, we have esteemed guests. So what we'll do is, identify them as such. We'll create this esteemed guest identity to act as a predicate, and then we'll create our Internet Amigos identity to ultimately act as the object. However, just because we'll be using it as an object later doesn't mean it only can be used in as objects. Identities can be used interchangeably across all of the slots. So you'll see here that we already go through, create these identities, and finally create the claims, right? So we create these two claims: my user, esteemed guest, Internet Amigos; my other user, esteemed guest, Internet Amigos. All right, and we're going to attest to both of these claims. Now, when we go ahead and query all of our identities, it's a little bit of deep query syntax, but it can be explained in plain English pretty quickly. Here we're essentially looking for identities, right, that appear in a claim as the subject, where the predicate display name is user, and where the object's display name is Internet Amigos. So just to prove that this all works and it's not a bunch of mumbo jumbo, let's run through this real quick. So here you can see we retrieve the users, retrieve the esteemed guest identity, Internet Amigos, and then we go into all users. So let's see here, all app users, and like I said, a couple other extra users, but essentially we're just searching through 4 identities based upon the claims that are used with them. So marching right on forward, we now want to get user profiles together, right? I think that's a pretty standard feature of an app. However, a lot of cases, user profiles, you get the same old standard fields like name, bio, image, whatever. And that's cool, but I think it'd be even cooler. We're all Internet Amigos here, and so maybe we should let our amigos choose what fields they want to have in their profile, right? And be able to parse those without having to keep track of a bunch of different schemas, like for each individual. And so I can show you how we can do that via intuition as well. So, essentially what we're going to do, similar to that esteemed guest special predicate, which not so special, just sort of use it to signify within the app, hey, this has special meaning to us, right? And so we'll use another one that is now the Internet Amigos profile, right? And so a naive approach, or one that many might make, is to maybe have a special predicate for each of the profile fields. However, we need to go one layer of abstraction further so that we can truly let them do whatever fields they want. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this special predicate, and then we're also going to create what I call here like a profile pointer, which is essentially to act as the subject for all of the profile fields. So these profile fields are going to be defined just as we have with other claims, with the subject being this profile pointer, the predicate being the field name or key name, and then the object being the value. So just as a preface, we'll have my user, kind of a weirdo. They want the field's favorite ice cream and their shoe width. And then we have my other user who wants the fields the worst superhero and the sense of smell ranking global, not to be confused with the sense of smell ranking local. So going through, once again, creating identities for both the fields as well as the values. Superman, not only a superhero, but an ice cream. And then also shoe width, key, value. And finally, we create the claim with the subject as the profile pointer, predicate as the field, object as the value. So once again, nice visual representation of how that claim ends up working out. And then we do that all for the first user, and we can do all the same for the second. The final step is actually linking that profile pointer with the user itself. So how we do that is going through with the user as the subject, the predicate being that special predicate we defined earlier of Internet Amigos profile, and then the object being this profile pointer. Now, what this means is that essentially in an attestation-based system, we tend to focus on attestations as being sort of the enabler or disabler of associating various claims or fields with an identity. So by hooking everything up to this pointer as a method of indirection, that means that all you have to do is unattest from one claim to be able to relinquish this profile, and then attest on another sort of profile pointer to be able to move into another one. And so moving through this a little bit quickly, but just mainly want to get through this, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, so figure it'd be nice to field those. So just once again, going through the second, and then more interestingly, I think, is how we get this back out, right? We don't want to be searching for fields all the way, things like that. So I'll go through with my user one, just the most simplistic example I can put together of how we essentially get this user profile back out. So first, we need to get the user's identity, right? Then we're getting the profile pointer. So like I had said previously, we had created a claim with the subject as the user, predicate as this Internet Amigos profile. And then finally, we need to get all of the claims with the profile pointer as the subject. And if we remember, those claims all have the form where the predicate is the field or key for the profile field, and then the object is the value. So now that we have this nice list of claims, just searching through with the profile pointer, we can now reconstruct it. So essentially what we do is go through the claims, look up the base identities, get the display names, because these identity IDs are gross and not readable. Not too much significance there. But as we go through each field, we can look up that predicate identity and the object identity, get the display name, and set it as a key value pair in the profile. So just to sort of, once again, I promise it works. It's not some mumbo jumbo. And the kind of cool thing, it seems like a lot of steps, but this is to handle any type of field that you want. And these are all can be user set, right? So here we have it. This initial user, shoe width, Fred Flintstone, favorite ice cream, Superman. And not only are these profile fields user set, but also dynamic. If they decide they don't want to have this profile field anymore, they can get rid of it. And so the core method or strategy at Intuition, as we look at decentralized data contribution, we tend to look at it with like a very schemaless approach, and from a very imperative sense. Declarative data involves standards and schemas, and getting a lot of people to agree on schemas is a massive headache, and getting a lot of people to agree on changing a schema is even worse. So if we can essentially derive these schemas by seeing how people naturally use information, I think that's a leg up from trying to anticipate exactly what fields are going to be needed. And it's nearly impossible to anticipate what data fields folks will need, way down the road or in different contexts. So that was a lot. I think there's a lot of complexity here. And so would love to field any questions on any of this process. Just as a reminder, we initially went through and created our users as well as a special predicate to make claims on our users to essentially silo their information. So we didn't pull all of the identities, right? We just pull the identities of our users. And after that, we enabled users to self-define their own profile fields and retrieve them without any sort of concern as to, what those fields were defined as. So any questions?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. It's super clear. There's just one question with regards to the hackathon, or even in general, if anyone looking at the Intuition tech stack. It's in terms of kind of use cases that you would like to see built like over time. Of course, it's kind of like everyone's free to do whatever they want. But what are kind of ideas that you have at Intuition, like in terms of what you would like builders to build in general?
Oh, so definitely focusing on reputation and subjective data. I think it's one thing to just onboard Web2 data from existing silos. That's typically not where we tend to spend our focus. Tends to be more so in the areas of determining, okay, hey, maybe is this person, in a DAO situation, right? Like based upon various evidence of their, forum contributions, voting history, things like that, or based upon like things by their other DAO members, like, are they a good contributor to this DAO? Is there, based on the claims and attestations made against a specific identity, what sort of like different ranking schemes can you come up with, right? Like, maybe if I was looking for a restaurant, I would much rather trust, I would probably weight a friend's recommendation or like a close associate like 10 times higher than any arbitrary person's recommendation on whether a restaurant's good or not. So, how do we like enable that in practice? Things like that are typically the things that we would like to see built. So mainly focusing on subjective reputation, and essentially, getting the human wisdom up in your noggin out there so the public can benefit from it.
And just in terms of, you mentioned if someone wants to build with Intuition, like in terms of the steps, should they sign up to get an API key?
Yes. Yeah. So Matt Murray would be the best point of contact there in terms of onboarding for API keys and things like that. I believe we have an inbound chat set up, but can share the details of that after this call, or Matt, if you'd like to chime in, would probably be the best point of contact there.
Awesome. And just wait, I'm letting more people in, but even though it's kind of like approaching the end of the workshop, but
Okay.
I just had a question also with regards to like tech stack in general and Web3. A lot
Yeah.
of teams and builders, generally speaking, like have different ideas, but they're never really sure of like what tech stack to use. And I think it was pretty clear from your presentation. But putting yourself in their shoes, like if you have a specific idea, like should you just use Intuition, or do you think it can also be used with kind of other tech stacks in general, like
Oh,
in the hackathon? Like if you, I mean, I sorry to put you on the spot if you have something that comes up.
no,
But there's
no.
that kind of question of like, oh, I want to do this. I want to use their rotation, but I'm thinking of using ceramic, or I'm thinking of using Orbis, but I also want to use Intuition. So do you see any kind of like ideas or concepts where you could be like, okay, I use Intuition for this, but maybe I want to use another tech stack?
Oh heck, I mean, we use ceramic, it's can't recommend them enough. So, I think there's definitely a lot of compatibility here. In terms of like graph-based querying across as well as like enabling easy onboarding. I think that's a good use case for us. And we also are offering a template application. So essentially everything's already wired up in terms of auth. and some basic like introductory queries to get you up and running, but one click up and deploy, and should be compatible with the vast majority of the other tech stacks present at the hackathon. So my recommendation would be, yeah, definitely use what makes sense. And if you need a template app, don't know where to get started, can't pick a framework, we have that available. So
Perfect, super clear. I don't know for those that might have arrived a bit late. If you have any questions, especially the recording will of course be available to Intuition internally, but also just for all the builders and hackers that will see the video. If you've arrived late or you have a question or about Intuition, please don't hesitate. And also, if you want to add a couple closing words, John, go feel free.
yeah, I guess without any questions, we'll close out. You know, definitely want to push builders towards decentralized storage mechanisms. It's really important to be able to have this like public data share, and as you see on Intuition, by having to sort of silo applications data, or at least like limit querying, that also means that you have access to all the other application data out there, which is just so cool because it enables like really great cross collaboration scenarios between applications. No longer do you have to make a new user profile every single time you go on to a different app. And you can harness the wisdom from all these different apps too. So without public data, that's just not possible.
Yeah,
So yeah, good
fair
luck
enough.
building, guys.
There was just a question of where is the template available that you mentioned?
The template application. So that's going to be on our GitHub, as well as this entire stack will be available on our GitHub. The organization is 0x Intuition. So after this call, make sure that all those repos are made public and accessible. I believe the template app should be up. This one is definitely public as well.
Perfect. I mean, I saw someone that just joined, but we're approaching the end, so you can always watch the replay. But unless there's a final question from anyone in the audience, even if you arrive like at the end or after the workshop, if you have a question, feel free to ask it right now before we close out. Even if it might have been answered before, if you arrive late, no worries. Don't hesitate to ask your question right now. If not, we're going to close out. And thank you so much, John, for the presentation. I'll just give a couple of seconds if there's a question, but if not, I think we can close out.
Hey, hi John. This is Harshal actually. So I think I joined in late, but had this one
Mhm.
question. What exactly, because there's not much information about intuition publicly available. So what kind of applications or use cases are you guys targeting? Or like how exactly are you guys like thinking about the ecosystem? Like what kind of applications are going to build on top of intuition so we can access that? I mean like that data. So what are the plans for that?
Sure. I guess at a high level, our primary focus, that might be a little bit of a differentiator, is that we really want to focus on reputation and sort of obtaining subjective truths via crowdsourced wisdom. So rather than essentially acting as like a Web3 Wikipedia or onboarding a bunch of existing Web2 factual data, we're sort of have a completely different focus of subjective data. How's that new restaurant down the street? Is this guy a good leader? All questions that the answers to which are like very valuable, but also vary from person to person, right? Based on your connection with whoever made the attestations, things like that. So our goal as a protocol is to build a platform to enable folks to draw their own interpretations, as well as serve as a hub for getting the wisdom, opinions, knowledge that's in everyone's brains, out into the open so the public can leverage them. So in terms of what we'd like to see built on top of us, Really anything to do with, knowledge, wisdom, subjective truths. Does this DeFi protocol seem reliable? Do they have a good user interface? Would be one. DAO contributions, I'd mentioned a little bit earlier. Absolutely a great use case. Does the contribution style of this delegate uphold, your own core beliefs? Do you think that a given proposal is a good idea? If so, why not? I think uh all of those without very clear answers, definitely things we'd like to see built, as well as different frameworks for like algorithmically interpreting the data, right? Like I would trust my friend's opinion far more than a random's. How do you express that in terms of like a weighted graph query? um does that make sense? Did I answer?
Yeah, it,
Did
it
that
does.
help
It,
your
it does.
understanding?
I think that's helpful. Yeah.
Cool.
Not to put you on the spot, Harsha, but are you, in terms of the hackathon, do you have like an idea right now in terms of what you'd like to build, or you're just generally curious about intuition?
No, we're actually like in the hackathon, so we are like two people participating in it.
Cool. And based on what you heard today, oh, actually, you arrived a bit late, but like, well, it's a separate conversation, but I'm kind of curious. Like, do you think you see ways that you could implement intuition, or are you working with another tech stack currently?
Actually, yes. I mean, like, so one of, like, we're not like very clear around like what exactly the solution is going to look like. But one of the core challenges that we are working towards is again like what John has been talking about. That's like the concept of like relative identity, is because that's how if you work in real life, right? So it's exactly like what John has been mentioning about. My social score for someone, for a person, like is going to be maybe like 9.8 because like we share some like maybe like mutual interests. But because I'm going to be sounding like boring to another person, so my social score is going to be like maybe fairly something else. So one thing that we have been talking, like me and my co-founder have been talking a lot about, is like what kind of social infra, especially for these like social feed applications, what kind of like we can build around it, so developers and maybe like builders can access our infra to just like get these like one unified score, which is very subjective to like again like their use case. Maybe so maybe like how can we like not like build this entire infra, but how we can use like other infra solutions like intuition or ethereum attestation service to aggregate and map this all behavior like all together. So that's something that we have been working around on.
Cool. I mean, I guess the best place, there's the Discord of Intuition, right? That was posted there. And I think, I don't want to speak for John, but I think don't hesitate to send him a DM
Please,
or the
please,
Intuition.
please.
Sure, definitely. I've been a big help. Thank you, John.
Of course.
All right, thank you so much. I guess any final questions before we close out? And thank you so much. And for, as I mentioned before, for anyone watching the recording in the coming days, really don't hesitate to go see the docs of Intuition, because all the information is there, and then you can just send a DM, especially if you need ideas or use cases, go for it.